Hey guys, Zibboyeye or just Zib is fine, and today we venture into the sequel to Rec. Met with fan outcry for more, Hambalagero and Paco Plaza returned to write and direct Rec's sequel. But they weren't the only ones to return. Approximately 90% of the technical staff behind the first movie came back for the sequel. It's nice to see some loyalty between production and staff. Due to the success of Rec, the team was allowed an increased budget. I couldn't find an exact amount. One source mentioned 3.5 million euros, while another suggested an equivalent of $5.6 million, twofold that of the first movie. The sequel would release in October 2009, raking in a greater opening weekend than its predecessor. Speaking of, can it live up to the found footage grade I consider to be 2007's Rec? I wonder. So, let's hit record once more and look at Rec 2. The story follows a special forces unit led by a Dr. Owen. Heading into the zombie-infested apartment mere hours after the outbreak, the team searches for the blood of patient Zero, Medeiros, in order to create a serum. As I said before, Rec 2's budget outdoes that of the first, and it shows. Reactive environments, real-time effects, and impressive VFX can all be found in this feature. The intense flares in this clip are computer-generated. The effect has to track the actor's motion on top of the camera's movement, and it's pretty convincing. The perspective will occasionally switch to another member's minicam, their gun wielded low. It's designed to look like a first-person shooter. Fans of those games might get a kick out of seeing that genre converted to film. You can probably tell already the film is more actiony than the first. Plaza would compare this shift to that of Alien to Aliens. Some may enjoy the excitement, but I'm not a huge fan. The civilians of the first movie had to rely on whatever they could get their hands on to survive. So the armor-fitted armed men of Rec 2 removes a degree of fear. In response to this, Rec 2 makes the zombies much more resilient so to pose a threat. However, this results in an inconsistency of the zombies' strength between the first and second movie. No matter what, this premise would present issue, but I think the enemy's inconsistent power is worth the tension. Albeit as limited as I view the tension. This is a result of the movie's weak characterization. Characters are defined by values. To illustrate what I mean, let's look at the cast of Rec. The mother wanted to protect her child, the policeman wanted to keep the crowd calm, while Angelo wanted to record it all. These characters once distinguished themselves. However, the men Owen leads all have the same goal: procure the blood. Because of this, the officers blend into each other. This hinders the suspense since I don't care more if one dies than another. But even the first Rec excelled in its realism rather than its characters. Does Rec 2? In short, yes. One such example is the encounters. Filming the action was difficult due to the camera's wide lens. I'm going to get a bit technical. Often when filming fight scenes, movies will use a telephoto lens, the opposite of wide angle. This is because telephoto lenses offer high image compression, meaning that the distance between close and far is compressed. This makes a punch thrown inches away from an actor's face appear closer as if it made impact. A wide-angle lens, on the other hand, offers little image compression, meaning close and far appear distant. Since Rec 2 is filmed with a wide-angle lens, this makes faking contact harder, an issue which Balaguero and Plaza mended. We tried to perform the violence as realistically as possible. In some ways they were controlled, but we would have real fights and real attacks. The risk was felt on set. During the filming of one scene, actors incurred injuries ranging from bruised ribs to a broken nose. I mean, I admired their dedication, but yikes. Imagine knowing the director's commitment to realism and playing this guy. I'm sure he's fine. But the authenticity is not always violent. Like the first movie, actors were made unaware of the entirety of the plot, so they experienced the twists and turns firsthand. A decision I once again commend. At one point, the POV switches to a group of teenagers. Plaza and Balaguero loosely scripted this segment so that the actors would impart their own dialect onto the characters. The duo held a similar philosophy towards the Special Force team. They considered themselves like spies, observing the traits of the actors to adapt into their characters. Because of how much the actors put into their roles, Plaza and Balaguero commented that they sometimes felt more like witnesses to art rather than directors of it. Like the first movie, the cinematography serves as an extension of the film's authenticity. Rosso is tasked with recording their mission, but occasionally drops the camera to assist his team. A cameraman in the moment won't be able to catch everything, so moments like this feel real. A new tactic is used when the perspective follows the teenagers. In some scenes, the young actors operate the camera. The different way they film gives the camera character. It reminds me of an anecdote from the cinematographer. Rosso is played by Pablo Rosso, who also played Pablo in the last movie. On the set for Rec 2, Rosso would film a character in the middle of the shot like a news report, until Balaguero and Plaza pulled him aside to tell him to forget about Rec 1, forget about Pablo, he is just Rosso now. Moments like this illustrate how much the camera is a character in not only Rec, but found footage as a whole. In my review of the first movie, I devoted little time to the plot, but the story of its sequel is much more developed. I'll start with the zombies, which I suppose isn't an apt word for them anymore. Although their condition still spreads via bodily fluids, the creatures are kept at bay by prayers and crosses. They are bona fide possessions. Although I enjoyed the open-endedness of Rec's ending, I don't mind this. Now that the movies would be serialized, they had to settle on what these creatures were so to have a clear direction heading forward. It also distinguishes Rec from the multitude of other zombie media at the time. Demonic possession spreading like a virus, it's a unique blend of religion and science. We first catch glimpses of the teens through the view of the Special Forces. When following the teenagers, we see what brought about the intersecting plots. It was rewarding to see these stories connect. But my favorite aspect of the story is its cohesion with the first movie. A tape notes bites on Medeiros. This explains how the virus spread outside the penthouse, which was untouched upon in the prior film. The crew finds images of children used to test a cure for Medeiros. Now we know that zombie child at the end of the first movie was a test subject. The actors from Rec also return in their possessed state. Hey look, it's the fireman. Even if it released 2 years after, it's seamless. We're back right where we left off. In one moment, Rosso places the camera before a photo of Jennifer and her dog. The same dog whose veterinarian visit kicked off the quarantine.
Recibimos un aviso de un veterinario a que le había llegado un perro afectado por una infección desconocida.
Jennifer's father comes back to the apartment with his daughter's medication. He even becomes a character, breaking into the apartment in hopes of saving his daughter. The teenagers find a police-issued pistol, seemingly dropped when the officer restrained an infected. The teens also enter the apartment through the sewers via an entrance mentioned in the first movie.
En el taller textil hay un almacén subterráneo con una tapa de alcantarilla que comunica con las cloacas.
The sequel fills in ambiguities as well as expands upon details of the original movie. And what amazes me most is Balaguero and Plaza didn't anticipate a sequel. So for them to create this strong continuity without foresight is incredibly impressive. There's even more where that came from in spoiler territory, so let's give it a look. Nearing the end of the movie, a familiar face rears her head. What a reveal. The anticipation of the focus to clear, the shock of who it is. And then it cuts, like pulling away from you. What a tease. It kept me on the edge of my seat. Absolutely superb appearance of Angela. Hearing of Angela's encounter with Medeiros, the team heads back to the penthouse. There they learn of a door and other objects only visible through the camera's night vision. The night vision wasn't just a means to see, it made Medeiros visible. It turned my perspective of the original ending on its head. This utility of the camera also gives Rosso much importance as he uses it to direct the team. The monstrous Medeiros staggers her way back into the sequel, as does her actor Javier Botet, who deserves major credit for his appearance. Botet suffers from respiratory issues. The makeup applied to him can provide difficulties since it stifles his skin's breathing. So I admire his effort and commitment to go under the silicone once more. Face to face one last time, Angela blows Medeiros' head off. She then shoots Owen and his men, desperate to convince the doctor to signal their escape. Or so we think. Under the guise of Owen's voice, Angela orders her rescue. As it turns out, following Angela's initial encounter with Medeiros, the demon transferred its source to Angela. A great twist to close the movie. It's really cool to see the events that immediately follow the end of the first movie. The twist also does a good job of eluding the audience. We assume Angela kills the men out of desperation to escape, but the twist recontextualizes her actions. She, or rather Medeiros, wants to infect the rest of the world, which greatly elevate the consequences from the first movie. Rec 2 is an entertaining and distinct follow-up to its predecessor, but it wasn't always that way for me. When I first watched Rec 2, I was disappointed by the bland characters and action over fear direction. Although those aspects remain, I found much more I appreciated in my second viewing. The spectacle was impressive, the cinematography and realism kept the spirit of the original alive while exploring new techniques, and to top it all off, the story built on the original to end on a great conclusion. Rec 2 demonstrates how to kick off a series and, in my case, the importance of a second chance. I've been Zibboyeye, or just Zib is fine, and thank you for watching. Zibbo, bye bye!